Do you know Army?
Do you know Army?
Do you know Army?
Do you know Army?
Hey guys, welcome back to WWARMYTV, and once again, thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully you're enjoying every single episode that we put out there to you.
Yay.
Because we enjoy getting your feedback, getting your comments. Today we're going to talk about learning to read and write Korean, how we did it, and we want to get your comments back on it. If you've done it, how you've done it, and if you found it difficult or hard. And I'm going to start by saying that it is something that years back I approached the subject and I actually started doing it, and then I found that it was something that I lost interest in and I didn't want to do it anymore. I have been to Korea a number of times, and I found that they are very accommodating because they know English already. It's something that they're inundated with from a young age, and that you find a number of them that are very enthusiastic about practicing English with you. So it was not necessary for me, and it was very comfortable there for me, not even knowing the language. So yeah, I was not one that was enthusiastic about learning to read it or learning to speak it. I will throw a few phrases out there every now and again because it is comfortable for me and it rolls off my tongue, especially being the Army that I am. But that's about it for me, and I'm comfortable not knowing it. So I'm not going to be very active in this chat because of that. So I am that Army, and it's okay if you are.
Yeah, so first of all, growing up bilingual, I'm Vietnamese for those of you who don't know. I was already pretty familiar with just like learning languages. It's something that, even if you don't speak a language, when you grow up bilingual, you at least have a very deep understanding of a second language. And I didn't realize this until I was in college, but just off the bat, I personally find learning languages in itself really fun. I took 3 years of French in high school, and I know that's a meme because you might take 3 years of Spanish, but you only know hola. But I truly did take French very seriously when I was in high school. It's gone now because you have to stay immersed in it. But I was on my way to being fluent back in high school, and then after that, when I went to college for business, I very seriously wanted to learn an Asian language other than Vietnamese for business purposes. And I started learning Japanese. That's my minor. But the reason why I stopped with Japanese is that the reading style, learning kanji, I just found that was just too much for me. I didn't think that it was realistic that I would continue with it after school. So instead of Japanese, since Korean has an alphabet, for many other reasons, but my primary reason was to become business fluent in an Asian language, and for me that just became Korean. So that was my main reason for it, but otherwise, obviously it's also integrated to my personal life.
You said since Korean had an alphabet, did Japanese not have an alphabet?
So Japanese has an alphabet in the way that they also have characters that have syllables, but then because of the history, they have Chinese characters integrated into it. So
Which made it harder.
They use a mix of Chinese characters and alphabetical characters, mixed together. And depending on the context, each character itself can mean either the Japanese version of it or the Chinese version of it.
English was hard.
Yeah, you can see why I didn't think it was realistic that I was going to keep learning that
Right.
after school.
Well, how did you learn Korean?
Oh, right. Well, obviously we were all still learning. I forgot about that. I'm a very visual and hands-on learner, so I have a lot of different ways. For me, mostly though, I just need to be immersed a lot. So other than listening, active listening, not only to, not just dramas, but I'll try to watch certain movies. I'll try to study a lot because I'm a visual learner. I have textbooks, I have workbooks. I listen to a podcast for, the unit I use is Talk to Me in Korean. I'm a big fan of them, so I use a lot of their stuff. I do a lot of reading. I will have books specifically for practicing reading, and I'll read them out loud. So I have a lot of different methods, but that's me using a very studious approach, basically.
Did you tell me Talk to Me in Korean has actual workbooks linked with them?
Yes, and they have a whole store on their website of not just textbooks and workbooks, but they have like a whole library of books that they publish for specific components of Korean.
I think Talk to Me in Korean also has several tutorials on YouTube.
Absolutely. They have tons of stuff on YouTube, and they have podcast versions of their lessons from their textbooks. So even if I don't feel like opening a textbook and studying today, something that I will sometimes do is I'll open a game that I don't really need to listen to the music to, and I'll play a game and I'll listen to their podcast and I'll be talking Korean out loud while I'm playing games. And that's sometimes how I'll integrate it into my daily schedule so that I practice often.
So they have so it's kind of like for you, it was kind of like a learning at home classroom.
Yes.
That you created. Yeah, that you created for yourself through that Talk to Me
Yes.
network.
That's just how I learned though.
Yeah.
I really need to be in like a classroom type setting for language learning.
Sounds like to me that something like that you have to be really dedicated to and diligent with, and then you submerge yourself into it in that way.
Absolutely. It does take a lot of discipline, and it is really hard some days, but something I've luckily learned from having different types of language professors over the years is that it is way more easy and realistic and actually good for your learning to just say, I will practice 5 to 10 minutes every single day, rather than try to force yourself to like study an hour a day or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's just the frequency matters more than the duration.
Yes, that makes sense.
Right.
Now, before these two get started, I want to preface their stories because I watched it unfold. So before they began learning, we had an inside scoop, friends and family of ours that are actually Korean that said, if you're going to learn, start with reading because it'll be easier for you. And we thought, crazy. But these two took it to heart. And when they said, well, okay, we'll try it that way. I think both of them downloaded an app maybe, started that way, and actually started the visual and started trying to learn how to read it before learning how to speak it. And I came home and they said they were both gonna do it, and literally within a week, or maybe the week later, they would come downstairs and both of them were comparing, oh, well, what does this say? Or how do you sound that out? Or within a week, they were literally reading Korean. So much so that when she and I actually made it was my second trip, her first trip, we navigated our way through a lot of everywhere we went because she was literally reading the maps and reading the subways and reading everywhere we needed to go and everything we needed. There's a lot of English there also on the street sign and maps, but where there wasn't and everything we had to look up on our phones, she was reading it. But literally within a week, they were both reading. So take it away with y'all stories.
Korean is not a difficult language to learn how to read. It has very few, unlike English and Spanish. You know, I couldn't help but reflect back on the 3 years of Spanish, and now you know it's hola.
I know.
I had 1, 2, 3, 4 years of Spanish, and I left out with hola. So yeah, I wanted to learn Korean because I watched a lot of Korean dramas. And although I had subtitles on, I feel like my reading had sped up exponentially because it becomes a little complicated to constantly look down, look up, and eventually you get used to it and you don't even think about it. It's just what you do when you're watching K-dramas. But when I first started trying to learn the language too, I felt like what they were saying wasn't translated to the very little bit of Korean that I knew. I didn't quite match up the way that I thought it should. And so then I started trying to learn the language, mainly because I wanted to. I mean, when you're watching K-dramas for years, you do tend to look down out of habit, but then I started realizing I didn't have to look down as much. Now, nobody has an IQ like Namjoon. I didn't learn Korean from watching Korean dramas. Like he learned English from watching Friends. Like that to me, I don't know what his method was.
He's a genius. This is
Well, there you go.
Like,
Jin said it himself. He's like, we watch Friends too. Did you learn English?
Learn English from Friends.
Jay called him out and they're like, I watch Friends. I don't know English like you know English.
But I really do. I mean, I don't think he learned it just by literally watching it, did he?
No, I think he simplifies it that way, but I am absolutely certain that it took a lot more.
It took more.
Yeah, there had to be a
Process.
method to the madness because I just can't imagine
I
how
think
he
he tells
just.
it like that is a fun way.
Like you said, yeah, to simplify
Okay.
it.
Yeah, because I mean, we really would like.
It
to
may
know.
have helped him perfect it in some way.
Right.
Well, I know it could definitely help with pronunciation, for sure. And so I started learning Korean, just the alphabet, and then I walked away. And then I came back maybe a year and a half later, then I walked away. When I knew for sure I was going to Korea, that's when I kind of really buckled down and really started being consistent. And Sarah's absolutely right. It is better to be consistent and practice it 5 or 10 minutes a day than it is to try to sit down an hour and a half every day. Like, unless you are literally studying Korean, it's not beneficial to you
And
at all.
we're busy, you know, like we are all full-grown women and we have jobs and we have obligations outside of BTS, although they take up a lot of our time. We do have our own lives to get to take care of, and it's just not realistic once you leave school to be able to dedicate that time. I mean, we know that you can make time for everything, but there are just some things that are going to take priority.
Yeah.
Before, you know, sitting down and studying Korean an hour every day.
Going through my phone because I was looking for apps. I think those Korean apps are really good for learning how to read. Read. It was very important to me to be able to read.
There's lots of reading apps for Korean.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not. I mean, I've never seen a really bad one. I mean, like really, you just kind of go through and see which one caters to you, and then that's the one you choose. The apps are really good for learning how to read. And then once you've mastered the letters and the different rules, and you actually start reading, then like I go on YouTube sometimes and I put in word vocabularies or Hangul vocabulary, and it's just words that pop up on the screen, and then they'll give you like 3 seconds and then they'll say the word. So it's a good way, like when words pop up, you just read it and then they'll say it after, and then you can kind of get a visual on if you're on point with it. Because I'm gonna tell you, when I got a kid's book, because when you first start reading Korean, put yourself in kindergarten. Like literally put yourself in kindergarten or preschool. And get those kindergarten books in Hangul. And then start reading those, which are very much on your level. And sometimes it would take me 30 minutes to get through a kindergarten book.
But that's where you have to start.
That's where you have to start. And don't get frustrated or upset with yourself. It becomes easier and easier because, again, the rules are very simple. They have like maybe 6 rules. That's it. That's literally it. And so once you master those rules and remember the sounds for each of these letters or each of these characters, then you can definitely read, and then just keep moving up and up and up and up and up.
And don't look for perfection, which I've learned that from watching you guys. Don't look for perfection. You're gonna stumble over it. Just like individuals, everybody has listened to and run across individuals from other countries trying to speak your language in your country. They're not perfect with it, but then you get the gist of what they're trying to say. Don't look for perfection.
And especially for people like, you know, for foreigners come to our country, there's a lot of foreigners that have perfect English grammar, but they'll never get rid of their accent. It's not like we mind.
Yes.
And it applies for, you know, other countries. It's like, why would I expect you to sound exactly like a native English speaker when you're not from here?
Or if it's chopped. We've watched the guys when they go to other countries or when they're trying to speak English. It's chopped up when they're trying to order. They're speaking English, but it's chopped up, and those individuals, the way to
people get the gist of it.
They get the gist of it.
You start with those kindergarten books, and you'll be reading super slow, but just keep at it, keep at it.
It's very frustrating.
And once you get it, you'll be so happy because, like, when you look at BTS's songs, you can actually pronounce the words right. You don't know how many songs I sing, and if they actually heard me singing, hey, what is she talking about?
Y'all have heard me singing on this Boom Voyage. There's songs in this. But you
know what?
It becomes sounds and not syllables.
I do feel better because the few times we've seen the boys like refer to a pop song in English and stuff, they'll do exactly the same thing. Where they'll just like mumble like this is what English, like Sim talk, like Sims 4 talk. They'll just do that. So it's normal. It's a human thing.
Consistency, guys. Consistency. Even if you do it, walk away, do it and walk away. Believe it or not, each time you come back to it, it does get easier and easier because it's just a reminder.
That is how our brain works.
All right. So, for me, foreign languages are very, very, very difficult for me. I cannot retain any of the information. It's so hard. I'm more of a physical movement type person, so sign language is very easy for me. But when it comes to foreign languages, they're very, very hard for me to remember, to retain. When it comes to Korean though, in college, one of my coworkers who loves K-pop, he said that he was learning Korean. I was like, oh, that's cool. In my mind, I didn't have any motivation because I knew I'm bad at foreign languages. But then he showed me the 6 or 9 characters that exist in the Korean language, and then the rest of them are just doubled up. I mean, I was like, is it that simple? So I wrote it down on a flashcard, and those were the characters that I just needed to learn how to read.
Amazing.
And the sounds that they needed to make. So that was my first moment of starting to learn Korean. And then the more I read, the easier it gets for me to pronounce it. And then I started to feel competitive with Mako because I was like, well, I feel very insecure and outside of the box.
Good, healthy competition.
No, it wasn't healthy. It's a bad insecurity is a bad feeling. And I felt really bad that I wasn't going as fast as I wanted to. The only reason I wasn't going as fast as I wanted to is because I had no motivation. And I still struggle with that. But when the family friend, and pretty much family that she mentioned earlier, came into our lives, the guy, he became my sungsengin. He's like an uncle for me. And I love him so much, and I want to go travel to South Korea and meet him and visit him and all that. And because I want to, when I email him frequently because he's currently in South Korea. When I email him, I want to be able to email him in Korean. So that motivation puts me forward in like I need to go back to reading it and pronouncing it and writing it on my own rather than using Google Translate, you know? So that put me in the motivation mindset again. I'm the type of individual where if I want to succeed in one aspect of my life, all the other aspects of my life I need to improve upon as well. Because I can't do 100% in this part of my life and then all the other parts are slacking. That's how my motivation works. If I'm going to be motivated, I need to be motivated with this, with this, with this, and with this, and with this.
I think that's the key word, motivation. You have to understand why it is that you're learning it and keep your eye on the prize.
But that's the way my motivation works. So I know why I want to learn Korean and how I need to go about doing it. But if I don't get my other aspects of life in that same hardworking, overdrive kind of mode, then I'm not going to move forward. So that's the kind of army I am when it comes to being motivated to learn Korean. But seriously, reading it first is so easy. It's immensely easy, and that's how you can take the first step. The apps that Mako mentioned, those really help me with reading and pronunciation. And then we should move forward with doing something that's not systematic, like reading a newspaper or a book.
Yeah, because she brought me some newspapers to read.
And y'all, I'll at the end of this video, whenever we have time, we can compile some of these resources and we can have them in the description box for you. So don't worry about stopping and trying to do some research. I'll just have them all ready for you in the description box.
Awesome.
But I wanted to add on to motivation, and this is something that I had to learn over the years because I am just someone who needs projects, and I've always had projects to work on, and I've always gotten so frustrated with myself when I was having trouble keeping consistent with something. Because you know what, when it comes to motivation, you can remember why you're doing something every day, but you cannot control your feelings.
Yeah.
There are some days where you just cannot find it in you for the life of you to do certain things. And I've had to learn over the years that, motivation is inconsistent, but habit is. I would say that I try to use days where I'm the most motivated to really build the habits that I need to achieve some of my goals. And you can kind of put it akin to, for example, having our daily routine when we go to work. There's been days where we all are not excited to go to work.
Absolutely.
Okay, we all are not excited to go to work, but you have this habit, you have your routine down so that at some point it makes it at least a little easier for you that you're not thinking, you're just going through the muscle memory of getting yourself ready for work and getting in the car and getting yourself there. Try to apply that to things that might be hard for you to keep motivation up, like learning Korean. Establish your routine. Because of, for example, I'll use the games example I used earlier. Because of that, there are certain games now where when I open them, I just automatically think, oh, this is a game where I can turn a podcast onto, and I'll just do that by habit at this point, rather than trying to rely on motivation.
Yeah.
Let me say this. We chose the topic on how to learn Korean, how to speak Korean, how to read Korean for Worldwide Army, for our topic today. And this is Worldwide Army. And we want your feedback and we want your comments about if you've ever had to tackle this and how you did it, or if you've been thinking about how to do this. And we spoke about Japanese. I think Japanese is a beautiful language, one of the most beautiful languages I've ever heard, because I watch Japanese dramas, but I have to use the subtext on all of the dramas I watch. But learning any language is a tackle to take on, something that I've tried to, like my son is, one of my sons are fluent in Japanese, and how he took that on, I don't know, and he's fluent in French, so forth and so on. But there are a lot of different languages to try and take on. If there was another language you tried to take on and it wasn't Korean and you had a method in doing that, give us that feedback and how you did that.
There is one more tidbit that I forgot to prompt Mako to mention. Someone suggested to her a while back that another way to get familiar with the language, hearing it. So it's not just reading and writing it, it's not just speaking it, but hearing and understanding it is another step as well. And the way to get familiar with it is watching a drama that you've seen 5 times over, take off the subtitles and just listen to it. And then watch it again without the subtitles and listen to it. So that's another way you can learn to hear it and process it and understand it.
Yeah, because then you're forced to pick up on the few words that you do know.
Yes.
And then you can go back and look at some of the words you don't know. Then you can add those into your vocabulary and create more words that you do know.
Yeah.
So that's excellent.
So that's the form of submersion. Once you began to pick it up, that's a form of submersion.
So just as I don't know if it's a disclaimer or not a disclaimer, but because I'm used to having Korean in my vocabulary and Arabic in my vocabulary, and sometimes we throw Spanish in our vocabulary, because I would say interesante, or I'll say different words. Muy importante. I say add different languages in my English all the time, and I'm just kind of speaking on the Korean part. I noticed that some Koreans get offended if we
use it carelessly,
phrases,
or
like
phrases.
And I don't pretend to know or understand why that is, but know that I'm not trying to be disrespectful to anybody's culture or anybody's language. But this is me, and I am who I am, and this is how I integrate what I know into my own.
And what you love.
Yeah.
Evidently, we chose this language and this talking topic because we are Army. Because that is the family we are a part of, and the individuals, the 7 brothers we have, are Korean. So evidently that is the reason we chose this particular language. However, we are worldwide Army, and we come from a gazillion family members that speak languages all over the world. So as I said, again, give us your feedback and your comments, and if there's a language that you have tackled and you have a surefire method of how you tackled it and was successful with it, let us know and share that with your worldwide family.
And if you want to share a word a day for everybody to learn, share a word a day. That's cool with us.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much for watching.
Thank you guys, and do not forget to hit that like button
and subscribe and hit the notification bell.
Thank you guys for joining us, and stay safe out there.
And so
now you know.